We now consider log number 5407R4 by Mr. Moulton. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, to quote you, I have a compelling and important amendment to the desk.
The clerk will please distribute the compelling amendment. And without objection, the reading of the compelling amendment is dispensed with. The chair now recognizes the gentleman for the purpose of explaining his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I get started, I want to take a moment to thank my colleague, the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Sherrill, for her leadership on this issue. Her work helped make this amendment stronger, and I'm grateful for it, as always. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have claimed that meritocracy is back at the Department of Defense. We've heard the argument for meritocracy several times throughout today. But last month, during his testimony to the House Armed Services Committee, Secretary Hegseth couldn't even tell me how many generals he had fired. It's 8, by the way. Let alone name them, or tell me what a single one of them had done wrong. Is it a meritocracy to fire General C.Q. Brown, possibly the most qualified Air Force officer I've ever met, with deep Indo-PACOM experience, multiple prior commands at the 4-star level, leadership on modernization, and profound bipartisan respect, including from this committee, just because he apparently talked about his experience of being black in the military? Is it a meritocracy to fire General Haugh, the commander of U.S. Cyber Command, who served this country professionally, honorably, and apolitically for more than 33 years, because apparently Laura Loomer told Trump she didn't like him? Is it a meritocracy to attempt to fire the 3 judge advocate generals of the service, advocates general of the services, unsuccessfully, by the way, because you didn't even know that one of those positions was empty, and without having ever had a conversation with any single one of those career service members? No. Secretary Hegseth's purge is not about merit. It's about loyalty and ideology, and that is utterly inconsistent with our democracy. Our service members swear their oath to the Constitution of the United States. All of us who have taken it know that oath is sacred. And only dictators or would-be kings demand personal loyalty from their generals, not the president of a democracy. Dismissing an officer should either be because of a failure to uphold that oath or because that officer has failed to carry out the duties and responsibilities of the office. These dismissals have been neither. They are nothing short of an attempt to politicize our military. A politicized military, a politicized general and flag officer corps is a danger to our democracy, and I don't say that lightly. A military built to be loyal to a party or a politician puts the guys with the guns on the side of his politics. And then democratic politics becomes an uneven playing field because people are afraid to oppose the other side. That's untenable for our military. Republicans have spent years decrying the politicization of the military. It's shocking to see them so quiet now that it's actually occurring. My amendment does not limit the president's constitutional and democratic right to remove an officer. That's essential to civilian control of the military. It simply says that the secretary needs to provide us with a statement of cause, after the fact, indeed, because he should be able to provide an actual reason for firing professional military leadership. I think it's reasonable and necessary for our democracy, and I urge support. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes himself. Current law, 10 U.S.C. 601 states the president designates positions of importance and responsibility to carry out the grade of general or admiral or lieutenant general or vice admiral. By law, the appointment of an officer to pay grade of above 08 for service in a position of importance and responsibility ends on the date of determination of the assignment of the officer to that position. The president makes these decisions, and we will not tie his hands with these reporting requirements. For these reasons, I oppose the amendment. And before I go to the next person, again, I want to remind the staffs of the various members who are not in the chamber, have your boss get back to the chamber, because at the conclusion of this, we're going to have a series of recorded votes, and we need everybody here. With that, I will now recognize Ms. Sherrill of New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On February 21st of this year, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth made the unprecedented decision of removing 2 members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, C.Q. Brown, and Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, were capable and experienced leaders with 75 years of combined military service, and they were fired without cause or even an explanation. This amendment today would change that. It would require the President to submit a written justification to Congress to remove any senior general or flag officer. As far as I can tell, the only difference between General C.Q. Brown and Admiral Franchetti and their colleagues is that C.Q. Brown is black and Lisa Franchetti is a woman. We don't have an explanation from the administration for why they were removed, and when I posited my theory that I just listed, Secretary Hegseth did not even dispute it. So even if some of my majority colleagues believe that General Brown and Admiral Franchetti should have been removed, I hope they would agree that Congress needs to at least be given an explanation. The Joint Chiefs of Staff are our military's top leaders, overseeing their respective services and directly advising the President and the Secretary of Defense on everything from operations to man, train, and equip challenges. And leaving those positions unfilled is a serious risk to national security, depriving our military of experienced leadership and slowing down the decision-making process. In fact, we still don't even have a confirmed Chief of Naval Operations because President Trump waited 4 months to select a new nominee after firing Franchetti. This committee regularly discusses the importance of shipbuilding and modernizing our Navy, but for the last 5 months, we have not even had a Chief of Naval Operations. There are real national security consequences to removing one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a combatant commander, or other senior officer. And if a president is going to make such a monumental decision, they owe this committee and the rest of Congress an explanation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do oppose the amendment of my friend from Massachusetts. As we know, each flag officer serves at the pleasure of the President of the United States, and each president has a duty to ensure that his military leadership is in alignment with his administration's national defense strategy. And because of this, it is normal to expect turnover in military leadership at the start of each new administration. New strategy priorities might require new leaders to execute the Commander-in-Chief's plan to ensure national security. It's not like President Trump is the first Commander-in-Chief to fire flag officers. President Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and President Obama all fired military leaders over strategy disagreements. All this amendment does is politicize decisions that should be made on merit alone. This is about the President having trust in the decisions his military leaders will make, not job security for officers. I urge my colleagues to reject this dangerous amendment, which would not be offered but for Donald Trump being the current Commander-in-Chief. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Vindman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is truly a compelling and important amendment. Everything that the chair said about the president's power to appoint his officers is true, but that is not mutually exclusive with the president doing it for a proper purpose. And as opposed to what my colleague just said, Mr. Crank, there is nothing normal about the firing of 8 senior officers, including all of the senior judge advocates and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chief of Naval Operations. There is nothing normal about that. Our general officers and flag officers are nonpartisan patriots who swear an oath to the Constitution. That should be their only loyalty, not to the President of the United States. Service members serve regardless of party, background, race, or creed. It is perhaps one of the most American institutions precisely because it demands loyalty, honor, and respect based on one's shared quality, love of country. And this keeps us safe because merit is the measure of advancement above all other qualities. That is why it's deeply concerning that the Secretary of Defense fired 8 generals and flag officers without any explanation or report to Congress or their American people. The Senate confirms all general and flag officers to their rank, and the Constitution is clear that this is a congressional prerogative. The Secretary and President owe Congress the American people an explanation why they fire America's finest, those that have sacrificed, frankly, the most, decades overseas, apart from family? Why is Laura Loomer and her insane whims, why is that the driving principle behind the firing of a four-star general, the commander of Cybercom? Incompetence or concerns they would follow unlawful orders? Maybe that's the reason. They want blind obedience and loyalty. We just don't know. This common sense amendment from my friend from Massachusetts would fix that. Congress and the American people deserve to know that our military remains nonpartisan, loyal to the Constitution and the American people, and not to the President of the United States. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am proud to join my colleague, Rep. Moulton, as a co-sponsor of this amendment requiring written justification from the Secretary of Defense before the removal of certain general and flag officers from the military. When President Trump abruptly fired several high-ranking military leaders earlier this year, Congress received no reasonable justification that these officers' actions or performance were cause for removal. The decisions were purely political and made without regard for the strategic impact on our military readiness or the loss of important institutional knowledge. Back in February, when the Trump administration began mass layoffs of federal employees, I introduced the Protect Veterans Jobs Act to ensure that any veterans who served our country were immediately reinstated. Today, I endeavor to prevent more indiscriminate layoffs from happening in the first place. Congress must assert itself. This amendment is necessary to ensure that President Trump does not further gut our senior military leadership simply because they were acting out of loyalty to the Constitution, not a wannabe king.
He said he told us.
Our military leaders deserve our support, not their dismissal simply for defending diversity in the military or serving their country. In the name of keeping our military nonpartisan and the greatest fighting force this planet has ever seen, I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this common sense amendment. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes another gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Moulton for leading on this important amendment. I believe that this amendment should have the support of every member of this committee on both sides of the aisle. This is not political. It does not tie the Secretary of Defense's hands, and it doesn't constrain the President's ability to have the military leaders he trusts advising him. If there is cause to release a general or flag officer from command, the President and the Secretary have the right to remove that officer. No one is arguing that they don't. This amendment simply protects two sacred parts of our defense infrastructure: Congress's constitutional oversight responsibility and the non-political nature of our military. The firing of a general officer isn't something to take lightly. It has serious national security implications for military operations. It ripples down the chain of command. It impacts on our relationships with our security partners and can even have a chilling effect on up-and-coming officers. That's a serious thing, and having the ability to conduct oversight over choices of that magnitude is intrinsic to our roles on this committee. Here's the thing. The President and the Secretary may have perfectly valid reasons for relieving several members of the Joint Chiefs. They may have perfectly valid reasons for removing General Haugh from Cyber Command. But the fact remains, we just don't know. That the members tasked with conducting oversight over our national defense have been kept out of the loop on major personnel moves implicating Senate-confirmed defense leaders should concern all of us. I urge my colleagues to support this common-sense amendment that will enable the members of this committee to do our jobs, and I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you. I don't think we designed that, Mr. Chair, but it was fun. So I appreciate my colleague, Mr. Moulton, for bringing up this issue. And as the ranking member highlighted, since April 3rd, Cybercom in Maryland, headquartered in Maryland, has been without a combatant commander. And in the more than 3 months since he was fired by the president, we still don't know why. And all we have has been mentioned are breadcrumbs. Far-right influencer Laura Loomer, known for spewing hate speech and spinning conspiracy theories, claimed that General Haugh was disloyal to the president because he was selected for the role by General Milley. Last month, I questioned Secretary Hegseth on when a replacement would be announced, and yet, despite the secretary saying an announcement would be imminent, there is still no general officer selected for that critical command. Firing combatant commanders on the whims of a social media influencer does not help our military become more lethal. It only harms our national security and makes America look weak on the world stage. Congress, this committee, and the American people deserve the president to show his math and explain why he is firing those entrusted with leading our combatant commands. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield my time to Mr. Moulton.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Chairman, in the vain hope that the debate actually matters here, I do want to respond to some of the suggestions made by my colleague, Mr. Crank from Colorado. First of all, he cited Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Obama for firing generals, which they all did, because they made clear mistakes. In every case, the president explained what those mistakes were and what his rationale now for firing them was. You said that they should only be fired for merit, so then where is it? Why is it that the Secretary of Defense came before this committee and could not answer that simple question about any of the 8 generals or flag officers that he fired? He couldn't even cite how many there were. Now, the chairman said that this reporting requirement would hobble the president. I mean, really? Like, the Secretary of Defense can just have his aide literally write down why he's firing them and send it to Congress. That's the bare minimum. And the fact that we would throw out our constitutional responsibility here to provide some modicum of oversight because we can't ask Trump and Hegseth to explain the unexplainable, why they would just fire these folks, that is the definition of politicization of the military. Having Laura Loomer make these decisions is a definition of politicization of the military. So we're about to vote on a whole slew of amendments that the majority claims will take politics out of the military. Just have the courage to vote for this one too. It's not that hard. A simple explanation. We ask for it all the time for this committee. There will be many reporting requirements included in the bill that we're all about to vote to pass later tonight. This one, out of respect for men and women who have put in far more years of service than just about anyone on this committee, myself included, is, I think, the least that we can expect from the leadership of any administration, Republican or Democrat, when it comes to overseeing our military. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also support this really important and vital amendment from my colleague, Mr. Moulton. This is a non-political amendment, or at least it ought to be, and I agree that the people who we are speaking of serve at the pleasure of the Commander-in-Chief, but there ought to also be a clear reason or justification behind the actions of removing them from their offices, and none has been forthcoming in any of these cases that we've observed in the last several months. Loyalty to the Constitution is the measure and standard that we should hold these professionals to, not fealty to the President. The U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, Lieutenant General Jennifer Short, are just a few, all removed, and perhaps with valid reasons, but we just don't know. These names are some of the many names of the most senior women in our armed forces who have been strangely removed from their post by the Trump administration. And each of these women presumably earned their titles based on their merit, their experience, and their unwavering commitment to service and this nation. They didn't earn these titles based on their gender, but they were removed from their titles because of it, most likely. It's hard not to see this as being the reason, with no other explanation provided. This administration's systemic and intentional rollback of women's roles and overall troop diversity diminishes the military's readiness, and it devalues the standards of integrity of the military itself. Diversity in our armed services improves innovation and mission outcomes, making our military stronger and smarter and more prepared to face the challenges of modern warfare. It's for these reasons that I urge support of this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member seek recognition on this, Mr. Moulton's amendment? If there's no further debate, the question occurs on the amendment offered by Mr. Moulton. So many as are in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Recorded vote.
Recorded votes requested. Recorded vote will be postponed.